Well, hello, messy families. Thank you for joining us. For those who are watching us, hello out there. It's great to have a little video cast of this as well.
Though kind of vulnerable and like still getting used to it, but whatever.
Whatever. I looked at myself and I'm like, man, whatever. I don't know why she chose me, but I am happy she was tricked into it.
Yeah.
We are in this wonderful month of the year, and I think that actually we are coming up on a couple of things. One, right away this week, if you're listening to this podcast, right away we have a family board meeting webinar that we're doing.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And if you can't join us live on January 25th, we invite you to watch the recording because we believe this is a great time for a family board meeting. Mm-hmm. A family board meeting, if you don't know what that is, where have you been? But a family board meeting is an opportunity for moms and dads to come together and say, how do we live a more intentional life? It really has been a game changer for us. I say 15 years. Does that sound right? Something like that?
Sure.
Give or take, that we've been doing this, that we try to go away annually and get on the same page, both with the kind of big picture of where our life is going, but also in the more specifics, what's happening in this year ahead of us, because too quickly we're running to the urgent and we're missing out on what's really important and we're not making time for it. And when we fill up our calendars, we get trapped and we get stuck, and we don't want to live that way.
And the nice thing about this family board meeting webinar is that it's free, and we're going to give you a free resource download that you can take this and then you can go and do the family board meeting by yourself. If you get stuck or you're like, you know what, I really need some accountability, have no fear. We are here for you. So we are going to do our own family board meeting course in April.
Yes.
But if you'd like to start off the year and do it on your own,
we've got a lot of free stuff.
We got all the free stuff for you. So come to the webinar and invite your friends. Because if you've done the family board meeting and you're like, oh my gosh, I would love our friends to know about this. I don't know how to explain it or whatever. Just tell them to sign up for the webinar. Yeah. And then if they miss it live, they'll get the recording in their email. So it's super easy.
And also too, look at this, man. I've got my messy family gear on today.
I thought you were like, I've been working out. Look at my muscles.
Thanks, Hans and Franz. I love this pullover, and I know a lot of folks have gotten it by now, but I love this. It's nice and
I wore mine the first one of the first videos, and now you're wearing yours.
Yeah, pretty good.
Fun times. Very good.
Okay, so I want to put a disclaimer out there. We are the Messy Family Project, not the Perfect Family Project, and we have gone through challenges in our marriage.
What?
I know. And I'm not going to bring all of my problems up right now. I'll let Alicia do that later. But what we really had some challenges, and it's so much easier. I was just saying to somebody today, it's so much easier to tell somebody what to do than actually do it yourself.
That is very true.
and I spent many years as a business consultant and a political consultant, and it was so much easier to tell a candidate what to do than to be the candidate myself. It was so much easier to tell a business owner, what to do, or a ministry leader, than actually deliver and do it myself. And when people have come to us, we're like, hey, where's your date nights at? And I have to tell you, we kind of fell off. We work together. Alicia and I, we love each other. We travel together, and we have all these kids together. We have all these things, and we kind of fell off the bandwagon with our date nights. And
I don't think we were ever fully on the bandwagon sometimes.
but
off and on, it's different.
Off and on, right? We've gone through seasons and ebbs and flows, and I think it's because we were spending so much time together
since we're doing this ministry,
and there was just more friction. There was just more challenges. And if you have an amazing marriage, go on a date night. If you don't have an amazing marriage and you want one, go on regular date nights.
Yeah,
and we've picked that up. It's simple. It was easy. Sometimes we go out and have
so now we have actually on our calendar and we're doing it weekly.
Yeah. And
because what would happen is that we would try to do it monthly, and then we would forget. It's just like,
and then one thing got conflicted, and then we lost.
Yeah. And then we would do it kind of like date nights kind of sporadically. But we're at the point where we need to do a date night every week.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing. And it's not going to be always going out to dinner, because we can't afford to go out to dinner every week.
That's right. So sometimes it's happy hour drinks, and sometimes it's just hanging out and getting out of the house so that we can just talk.
Right.
And again, for us, a lot of those times are saying, hey, we're not going to talk about business.
You people. No. Talk about work, because we love our work.
Yeah.
We really do. I mean, I love what we do.
Yeah.
But we can, it's easier to talk about work than to talk about a relationship or the kids or finances. So
we have a whole blog post on having great conversations with your spouse about finances that we just posted.
So go ahead and check that out. Yeah.
Anyway, but I just thought of that. And then we also, January is also our anniversary. So we were married in the month of January. And I think we even referenced that in the
date night podcast.
The podcast that we're going to share with you.
The podcast we're going to share with you is from 2015. Can you even believe that, guys?
It's perennial. Its value is not diminished over time. It gets like a good wine. It ages well.
I guess it's just amazing to me that we've been doing the podcast for that long. Like, it has a flash. I couldn't even believe the date when I saw it. It has gone so fast.
Yeah.
So when you're listening to this podcast, I think that I don't know what we say about our own date night on here. If we were at a good spot of doing date nights or not, probably. Yeah. Well, but anyway, it is definitely a perennial topic. I mean, you could talk about it forever.
And I'll just say, for us, we needed to re-energize our date night. So if you've fallen off the wagon or never gotten on the wagon, come on, the water's great. Get into a regular habit of date nights. But we're going to tell you in this podcast why you should do it, how you can do it, things to do on your date nights, and how to make them, a really great, robust part of your marriage.
One thing I did want to share with our listeners before we jump to the podcast is, like Mike said, it was our anniversary, January 8th. And we went away on an overnight, which we don't always do on our anniversary. But it was like we left on a Sunday morning. So we went to Mass Saturday night. We left Sunday morning and we came back Monday night. And it was amazing. We went to...
it was so fun.
We went to this place in the middle of Pennsylvania that was the most amazing things to do, the amazing room, amazing service. We just played. That's what I feel like we did. We just played.
I just thought that was what we needed.
We did ice skating, and I'm going to the chiropractor tomorrow because of it. We did ice skating. We did skeet shooting.
We did bourbon tasting.
And we did bourbon tasting. Yeah. We played pool. We did shuttlecock. We played darts. We went swimming. It was just all of these just really fun. You just played, and it was great.
And so enjoyable.
And it was so enjoyable. And for us, like I said, we do travel a lot and speak to people and all of that. But this, just to be able to go and just kind of just be and just relax for an extended amount of time. I definitely could have stayed for another 24 hours, but we had to get back. But I feel like we did so much. Actually, one of our sons, we sent all these pictures. Our teenage son was like, how are you doing all of these things
I know.
so quickly?
Well, I did have it a little bit scheduled out. I scheduled a bunch of them out, but I felt like it was so full.
Yeah,
I felt so full, and and that's what we need on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And then I don't remember, but we talk about the daily, the weekly / monthly, and then the annual, right? And those filling up your marriage is important, not just to you. It's obviously important to your spouse. It's important to your kids, but it's important to the world.
One thing I do want to say about the type of date night that you do is that I think earlier in our marriage, we didn't need to do anything. We just needed to talk because we had no time to talk ever. But for us at this point, I feel like because if we talk, it normally devolves to talking about work. We actually needed those activities to do that.
Right.
We needed activities. We needed to just learn, just kind of play together and be together during that time. And so just to say that date nights at different points in your marriage
will look different.
Yeah,
and they should, right?
Exactly. Exactly. They really should, because I feel like our lives in some ways were a lot simpler when we were drowning in children. We were like, oh, we just need to just get away and just sleep and just talk, and just be together. Well, now, we're older and all of that. And so it's just to have more fun together, anyway. But maybe that's different, for different couples and their personalities and things like that too. So anyway, we just want to give you some ideas and some inspiration for you to have your own date night.
All right, let's listen in.
So today we're going to talk about date night and getting away. So for your marriage, we're looking at our past topics and there's a lot of family things. We're going to talk about marriage today.
Because again, we began our podcast, I think, as some of my relatives like to say, we're cajoled into doing this, but we started it actually on our anniversary, our getaway weekend.
Because we were weirdos. We got married in January in the Northeast.
Bad idea in some ways, but the best decision I've ever made in all of my life. But it's important. We started our podcast that way, and I think it's very important to keep reminding ourselves of how important our marriage, our relationship is, and that it's got to be a priority. And if it's not, everything else is going to really fall apart.
The foundation of your family is your marriage. And a lot of times we forget that, especially when you have little kids or we have a lot of kids. And, in this world today, there's so many things that are distracting us. But I think that we really have to realize that, our marriage is the foundation. And so look at your life and where are you making your marriage a priority? You were a husband and wife before you were a parent.
That's right.
And so that's the foundation from which your family springs.
And remember, we're Catholic. We believe in a large family. We have 10 kids. So we're not saying we dismiss life or anything like that. But when we realize that this is the font from which all our family springs, if that font is drying up, if it's not renewed, it's going to hurt everything in our lives. Everything that matters to us is going to begin to lose its primary meaning.
What is the unitive and the procreative? The unitive, go ahead. You can say it better than me. That they're both ends of marriage.
Right. The two ends of marriage.
The two ends of marriage are two goods of marriage. Is the unit? Well, I'll say the procreative, which is obviously children, openness to life. Yeah, it's not even necessarily children because everybody has different family sizes, but it's that openness to life, openness to spiritual children, and giving of yourselves as a married couple. But then there's the unitive end, which is the unity between the husband and wife, which is a good in itself.
That's right.
And we need to remember that it's not just about your children.
Right.
Though that is a good of marriage and that's amazing. But the unitive end, the relationship between you and your husband, between you and your wife, that in itself is a good.
And it's interesting, when you look, and again, not to get too crazy theological, but like if you look at scripture, I mean, Christ says the model for the church, Christ in the church is the husband and wife. It wasn't the mom and the children, or it wasn't the dad and his sons, although those are beautiful images. The image of how Christ loves the church, how there is unity between us here on earth and Christ in heaven is the unity and the love and the sacrifice between those two.
And we need to remember that you're never done working on your marriage. Never, ever done. You may think there's some people out there that may be like, hey, I think my marriage is fine. We haven't gone on a date night in 3 months. Barely talked to my spouse, but I think everything is fine, right?
That's right.
No. Do not assume that. That's really dangerous.
The only thing that floats along is a dead fish in the water, right? So you got to swim upstream because our culture and our family life. I mean, we've got a couple kids here, and they're going to cheering and soccer and the play, and everyone's getting pulled in different directions. As important as all those activities and things, and maybe you're serving in the parish, maybe you're leading a Bible study, maybe you're, the chairman of the fine arts committee at the school, or whatever it might be. All those things are nice and good, but as Alicia said in another podcast, those are really periphery in some senses. I mean, they're all good, but really it's after you take care of yourself and your prayer life, you really need to take care of your partner and your spouse.
That's right. Because it's good for the both of you. Actually, it's good for you to have a strong marriage, and it's good for your spouse too.
And also too, I mean, just as a motivator, I don't think there are very many people, like there was that, I can't remember, Ashley Madison.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this awful thing that everyone's seen on the news, right? Where this creepy affair site, right?
Yeah, it was like a website to set up affairs,
right?
Basically.
And so these are, I assume, married people who went on there into this secret site to connect with people who wanted to break and violate their commitments to marriage in a secret way. And now their information is
because
revealed.
There's some kind of excitement involved in that, I guess.
I don't know. Anyway, but the reality is I don't think very many spouses, at least those who are quote unquote the victims in this, ever would have, not only do they not want it, not deserve it, but they would have never imagined that they got to there. And so not that we can avoid that. And there is going to be some situations. I mean, I don't want to bring this negatively, but the reality is that we've got to always never be too sure of ourselves in the sense that we want to always.
A marriage deteriorates incrementally.
Right. It's never a one snap. It's over.
Exactly.
Again, I'm not saying there aren't there are either mentally or morally corrupt people who, no matter what you did, they're going to be bad and they're going to do.
Have free will.
But how can we, I guess let's just look at what we can control and say, how do we make sure that we're in a situation where we're constantly renewing the well in our marriage?
And we don't want to just do the minimum. We don't want to just hey, we're open to life. We are celebrating the sacraments together. And that's it. That is the minimum. You need to be building upon those graces that you're getting through living a Catholic life and really rejoicing in your marriage. It's work, but the return is so wonderful. And you can really just have I know so many of us felt like when we got married on our wedding day that we're marrying our best friend. And that is the most wonderful part of marriage. You got to keep building that friendship and never assume that you fully know your spouse and just be like, hey, I want to know you more. How can I love you more? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And just realize taking the time together. And that's what we're going to talk about. We're talking about going out on dates and getting away together alone. But the foundation of that, why you do that is because you never can fully know someone. The only one that will ever fully know you is the Lord. Right. Only God is going to fully know you. As even you can be married 70 years and you never fully know your spouse. And that's a beautiful thing. Right. That's an awesome thing because you spend your whole life discovering the mystery in that other person. Right.
And an image in the secular world is that you, a man, again, I'm just going to take it from what kind of often is in the media, the man works really hard during dating and trying to pursue the woman. And then when they enter marriage, they're like, I won, I'm done. And now I'm going to become fat and lazy and sit around and get my beer and sit with my remote control.
And not want to go out dancing and not want to go to any parties and not want to do anything.
Or they have lost the curiosity, the allure, or whatever it might be.
And the wife is the ball and chain.
Right. And so it's like, have we allowed any of those images to creep in to our perspective? And have we allowed that zest, if you will? And really, I love my wife more today than I did when we were married. I hope you can say the same.
I know when people say, I love you just as much as I did on my wedding day. I feel like, what? I didn't even know Mike on my wedding day. And now looking back, comparing to how I know him and how much I love him now, I'm like,
that was nothing.
That was just like the Holy Spirit guiding me because obviously I did not know what I was doing.
I'm so glad she was completely inebriated and didn't understand.
That is not true.
With the Spirit, I meant.
But really, I really do think that, I know that I love and know Mike so much more now than I did on my wedding day. And I believe that that's the way it should be. And I hope that I can say that same thing 10 years from now.
Right. But with work, we're at a place where my work is very busy. We have lots of kids. We have lots of things going on and it becomes challenging. I remember, they're probably, every point is a challenge point for us to say, are we allowing kind of a laxity? The opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference.
That's right. And so remember that. It's very, very important.
And have we allowed indifference or kind of laxity in our marriage? Or are we really serious about it? Are we being really intentional about loving our spouse? Renewing, because we go to the sacraments. We're encouraged to go to, frequent the sacraments. What are the two sacraments we can frequent? Mass and confession. And you need that for your spiritual life. You need that for your marriage. And the sacrament of matrimony is renewed, not just when you make love, which is a great opportunity to renew, but it's through all of those moments where you are calling upon God to help you overcome your sinfulness, to get out of yourself. When you're struggling with, hey, I just came home, I'm so exhausted, but you know what? My wife has had the kids all day and she's probably harangued more than I was, and I need to stop. Or even if she wasn't, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's thinking about the other more than yourself.
Right.
And if we thought in some way, like the secular culture, the world teaches us that marriage is about what you get out of it, then we're missing a lot. And we're missing the boat on that. Life is about giving ourselves away.
Mm-hmm.
And the quintessential way that we find happiness and peace in this life is by giving ourselves away to our spouse.
Right.
So anyway, I just think that's important to kind of have that as the beginning point, the tipping point of why so it's important at any point in your marriage.
Right.
And it's never too late and it's never too early to start that habit or to restart. Because I feel like there are moments in our lives where it's kind of waxed and waned, if you will, that it's like in what we've called the survival zone. When we've got a lot of little kids, it's super hard to find that time and you all feel kind of exhausted at the end of the day and you just collapse. But it's making your marriage a priority and saying, I am not going to accept that.
I think actually sometimes when you're in the survival zone, when you're a young couple and you kind of like were just dating, some of you like 5 years ago, 7 years ago, we were just dating all the time, spent all this time together. Sometimes I actually think it's a little bit easier to keep up that date night. Easier in the sense of it's more like on your mind. You know what I mean? Like, because you're younger and your kids might go to bed earlier. So it's a little bit easier to, get a babysitter at 8:00 and you can still go out to a movie and a dinner or whatever and have people asleep. But but when I think and so anyway, you got to make sure that happens.
Yeah, I think it's actually really important during that survival zone time. I just remember particularly in our first couple of kids, it was really important for me to step forward and take initiative. I think it's important for men to do that in general, but particularly in those times, I found that my wife, Alicia, was waiting for me and I felt like she had it all under control and didn't need me. And that was a big mistake on my part. And, but I really think that during the survival zone,
guys, if you're ever wondering, women always need to be taken out on dates. Don't think, does she need it? Does she not need it? Yes, she does. Yes.
There's always even if she says no.
Exactly.
That's probably, she needs it even more.
That's right.
But the reality is, and again, this isn't everything, but I think in the survival zone, again, it's both of you, but it's really, again, assuming the mom is at home with the kids all day, and she's caring for them probably more than the husband is. I think it's really important that the husband really takes initiative and makes her feel like his bride and not just a mom.
Right.
And takes initiative. And even it doesn't have to be very expensive, doesn't have to be very fancy, doesn't have to be very complex. It can be as simple as, hey, we're going to go out to dessert tonight for an hour.
The main ingredient is you don't have the kids.
That's right.
That's the main ingredient.
Right.
Anytime you don't have the kids is a date. And I just want to say a little note about getting babysitters for your kids. I babysat a lot when I was younger, and there's so many times like the kids would be like crying and screaming and the parents would just leave, and I would just saying, just leave. Because as soon as 9 times out of 10, as soon as the parents leave, 10 minutes, 5 minutes after they leave, the kids calm down and everything's fine.
Right.
Do not ever allow your kids to dictate whether or not you go out on a date.
Yeah.
Unless they're like sick or obviously something like that. That's a whole other thing. But just do not allow that, because like we said before, the foundation of your family is your marriage, and you have to take care of your marriage.
And it's the best way to love your kids.
It's absolutely. And guess what? If your 3-year-old is screaming the whole time that you're out on a date, when he is 15, he is not going to remember that. He won't. They will not remember that at all.
But you and your spouse will.
Exactly. But you and your spouse will. And that's very, very important that you have that time. And also you can always, schedule it around when the kids are sleeping, or, good times that are good for you or whatever.
And
but you just have to do it.
In the younger, the early days of an infant and so forth, you may not be able to get out. And that's understandable,
Or you take the baby with you. I feel like any baby who doesn't really talk doesn't
almost,
count.
Yeah, that's almost a date right there. I think that's almost
right.
a date, right?
That's right.
And I remember, going out to concerts with our daughter, like our little infant Katie,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't want to lose the our romance in our marriage.
Now, just to clarify, this was not like heavy metal, like pot smoking concert. This was an outdoor Irish concert.
Yeah, but it was still pretty loud.
Yeah.
And well, some raucous people here or there. But anyway, but it was a lot of fun. And but just thinking that through of what there's this balance. There's a prudential judgment that you need to make about when you can do it, but there really isn't a really good excuse to not go out on dates. If it's been more than a year, you have an issue.
Oh my gosh, more than a year. That's pretty bad.
Right?
Yeah, I would say more than 3 months.
And again, thinking about what a date means. I mean, a date could be, again, anything. It could be very, very simple. It could be
So what do we do on our dates? Why don't you just what do we do as far as like conversation?
Yeah. So it doesn't matter where you go. I think it's a matter of just getting out of the house without the kids. Again,
right.
Asterisks on infant in arms. But going out and having conversation. And I usually start off with, how are we doing? How are you doing? Mm-hmm. And we just talk about stuff. Mm-hmm. We just talk about our relationship. We talk about, our kids. I mean, I end up talking about things, but then I end up talking about, for me, I end up talking about my work. My wife is my greatest counselor and advisor.
And that's okay for us. But
right.
For some couples,
I know.
For some couples, like I know one of my sisters, they've said when they go out on dates, they don't want to talk about the kids.
Right. And then I was just with a friend who just said, when we are by ourselves, we don't talk about work. It's intentional to not, and that's great. That's not for us. That's not
what we do, but that's what everybody.
And that's great.
It's for everybody
just
to decide.
That value. Mm-hmm. If you value that, do it. That's awesome. Right. But you can just talk about your aspirations or dreams. You can talk about, your plans. You can talk about whatever it might be.
We tend to talk about politics.
Yeah. Sorry, we're a little bit of a political junkies.
Yes.
But whatever it might be, or the idea, and I think we've mentioned this in some other podcasts, of just even, I don't want to say it's making a corporate board meeting for your family, but
I would say like just dream together sometimes.
Right.
Like just think about, well, what do we want to do? Like, what do we want to? What kind of outside yard do we want to have? Like, what kind of house do we want to have someday? Where do we want to go on our next vacation? Just like dream together and talk about your aspirations, things outside of where you are right now. Because I think when you can think big, that helps. I think that helps you decide where you're going.
That's beautiful. Yeah, no. And I think the more that we as a couple don't lose the sense that we're not done. Like we're not becoming this, this couple that is stuck in the mud. That's a fuddy-duddy, whatever. It's like, we still have dreams. And by being married, and, again, my wife is primarily at home, as a domestic engineer, as the CEO of Hernan Inc. Or whatever you want to call it. And it's like, at the end of the day, that's not all that she is. And that's not all that we are. And what do we want? What are we building? Because I think what we're building here in our home is something amazing. But it all again begins with our marriage and us, the two of us at the helm of this great ship.
Right.
And we're sailing it together and we need to be in sync. And have I hurt her? There are times when your date might be about, hey, you know what? I don't feel like we're really in sync. And maybe it's just me. Am I off or whatever?
And sometimes, very, very often, there are hurts that happen that you really never have time to address in a non-exhausted, non-interrupted kind of environment.
Right.
And that's another reason why
just going out
is really important because it's like outside of the fight, outside of the situation, you can say, you know what, honey? When you did blah, 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 that really hurt me, or whatever. You can talk about certain situations, which you don't have the freedom to talk about in front of the children. And
it's not appropriate.
It's not appropriate. Yeah.
But then if you're out in public, you're not going to be getting into an argument in front of the whole place.
Exactly.
And if your purpose is, I want to be united more closely with my spouse.
Right.
I want to be more entwined in love. You're not bringing it up as a past grudge that you want.
You can go back and listen to our arguments podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we talk about how to handle that.
Anyway, but that idea of...
But that's another reason to go out on dates is to talk about that.
You're thinking big about where you individually and as a couple are going. You can talk about your family values and the culture you're building. You can talk about problems that you're having with a kid, or you're going to talk about finances, or whatever it might be.
Talk about problems that you're having with each other.
Obviously, yeah. Yep. And so all of these things are perfect topics for dates. At least I would think. I mean, obviously, you can have 1,000,00001 things. It could be
then there's just like having fun together.
Just like going out and playing mini golf. Or going and playing a game somewhere, or maybe there's at the local bar there might be one of those like trivia games, or there might be, hey, you're going to watch a sports game together,
playing pool, going canoeing. I mean, there's like a million different things that you can do, no matter where you're at. Go back to the things that you did when you were dating,
right? Or you're just taking a walk in a park.
Right.
or having a picnic by yourselves, or
Right.
or maybe it's you're at a really fancy restaurant, you're going dancing,
And I think that it's important to know that even when your kids are older, when you have high schoolers or whatever, and there are times when you're at home alone and everybody's out of the house, that can be a time alone, but date is different than just time alone.
Yeah.
Like sometimes when you're, like I said, so there's the survival zone, like what dating looks like then. But then when your kids are older, I think it's important to recognize that you still need to get out of the house together and do something special.
And again, by going out, it doesn't matter how big or how small it is, but it shows a level of commitment. It shows a level of intentionality,
right?
And then it's committed. And again, I'll make a quick analogy here, but it's like, all of us probably pray throughout the day on some level, but are we being intentional with our prayer time, and making a commitment and making a time and going to a special place? And with our dating relationship, we need to be very intentional. It's nice to come home and kiss my wife and say, I love you. I'm so glad that you're my spouse. Or at dinner, those are beautiful and that's nice and that's needed. But you know what? You need to make the time and show my wife, again, this is for a husband and wife, because a wife can do this just as evenly or equally. But I think it's really important that, hey, I make time for an important business meeting. I make time to go on a trip for work because it's going to be good for what I'm doing, or our professional training or whatever. And it's like, going on a date is saying to your spouse, you're at least as important as anything that I do at work. Right. But really, isn't she obviously more so? And isn't that intentionality worth it? Isn't a little bit of planning worth it? And then again, I don't want to skip too quickly, but then you go to the next level of just beyond just a date to getting away together.
Right. Well, the one thing I was going to say, just to wrap up the date thing, is for ladies, the one thing I know makes Mike feel really loved is when I dress up.
Oh my gosh.
And then make myself, beautiful.
Hubba.
And and every and that's different for every husband. Some husbands like
my wife is really hot, so it's just like awesome.
As is my husband. But some men, they just like, hey, the t-shirt and jeans, and they love that. And some men, they would want you to dress up, just a little bit more dressed up. But it's whatever your husband would prefer. And you too, because it's nice to just make yourself look beautiful,
That's right.
And just spend some time, half an hour or so just getting ready for that date. And I think that shows your husband how much you honor him and that you're making this time special. He's planning it out what to do, but then all he really wants, ladies, is to sit there and look at you.
That's right.
Let's just be honest.
That's right. I don't need a TV. Actually, it's preferable if there aren't TVs around. So no sporting or other things will distract me.
Right.
But
anyway, we were going to talk about the getting away.
Right. And again, just thinking about just one last comment on dating. It's more important to do it than to have something perfect. And I think that sometimes some men can try to make the perfect.
Like Mike.
Not saying me. But sometimes we want to make it so perfect that it takes too long to actually get it executed and done. We need to forget. I mean,
just do it.
It's nice to plan. It's nice to plan, and I don't want to diminish that by any means. But it's more important that you actually do it than you just talk about doing it.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
And actually, then that goes for the weekend away. I mean, that can be applied to this as well.
Now, the weekend away is when planning is necessary.
Right.
Planning, probably assuming you have kids that need to be taken care of. It could be a night away. And I look at it as that every month you should probably be on a date. Every year you should go on a getaway.
Right.
And for some people, that might be a night. Some people, it might be a weekend. Some people might be like, hey, this is our anniversary and we're going away for a week or 10 days.
That would be way too long.
That would be long. We did that though, when we went to Assisi.
Oh, that's
Rome.
true. Yeah.
So that was a very special trip though.
We were married for 20 years.
That's right. But
anyway, I mean, but if you can swing it,
Right. But again, you have to realize, and I think for many people, we get so distracted with our children. I mean, when we've gone away, I don't know why I'm jumping to this automatically, but, there have been times early in our marriage where when we were away, we ended up thinking, how are the kids? Are they okay? And it's okay to worry a little bit about your kids, but you need to recalibrate. And a weekend away recalibrates you as a person and not just as a mom and not just as a dad. And again, I this is important for both you, but I think it's really important for the mom. At least I'm going to say that.
Yes.
And I think that she gets pulled on more by the kids, and she's more drawn naturally into the mom.
Your heart is always
identity.
entangled with your children.
Right. And that's beautiful. And they're so great. But I want to just encourage the husbands to say, I'm sorry. This is really important. This is important for our marriage, and it's important for you, whether you realize it or not. Not to be mean, not to be a jerk about it, but say, we need to do this.
Yeah.
And again, it can be small. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to jump immediately to a big weekend, 3-day
I think the first time we went away, it was for a weekend, but we've done all kinds of different things.
That's right.
But there's a big difference between a date night and an overnight.
That's right.
It's just, there's a huge difference for some reason.
No.
And it's just really important. And
it's the commitment of time. It's the commitment of intentionality. It's the commitment of saying you're more important than anything else going on.
I had a friend of mine who was married 25 years. And I remember in different times talking with her, she would be like, yep, we've never gone away. We've never left the kids. And it was almost like a matter of pride, and in my mind, I was just thinking, I didn't disagree with her, of course, and that's her experience. But I was just thinking, okay, that's fine. And she was like, oh, we've never gone away, never left the kids. And then they had been married 25 years and they finally went away for a week together. And she came back and told me, she was like, I don't know why we didn't do this sooner.
That's right.
Really regret that we didn't do this sooner. It was a mistake because it meant so much to them to have that time away. And I just use that as an example. Like, do not wait 25 years before giving your spouse your undivided attention for over 24 hours.
Right.
And it is amazing. And I remember the first time we went away, we had been married 6 years and we went away for the weekend, came back, and I just felt so renewed and so invigorated in remembering this is what it's all about. This is what it's all about. This marriage and this relationship is what it's all about. It is so amazing once you do it. And I have heard that again and again from couples who go away together.
You'll
and
never
just
regret it.
You will never, ever regret it. And again, I would say the same thing about the date night as I would say about this in regards to the kids. Even if the kids hate it, who cares?
That's right.
It's not about them.
That's right. That's right.
It's about your marriage, and they'll never remember it anyway. And even if you can't do it every year, but just to try to do it. And it does certainly get easier, but it's so, so important.
Yeah. So, and again, that weekend is just going deeper. And maybe, and there also too, that I wouldn't categorize this necessarily as a getaway, but it could be a marriage encounter or a marriage conference or something like that.
Yeah,
Even
we've done that as well.
Like a spiritual conference that it's just, hey, I'm not going with the kids.
We went on like a marriage retreat once. It was this conference talking about different marriage talks and things like that. It was beautiful.
And that was great. And it was just enjoyable just to be away, but it also that fed into us renewing our marriage. Mm-hmm. So just renew the well. Never forget that. And maybe for you, if you've been married for 10 plus years, I'm going to say to you, if you haven't gone away and you've been married 10 years,
do it. That's your homework.
Seriously, don't let this weekend or this week pass without sitting down, having that conversation and picking something, even if it's a year from now, because of finances or other things, you can't do it or whatever the reason is. Pick it, set it, and do it. And make anniversary, at least that's what we try to do. We try to use it around our anniversaries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's renewing
Which again kind of sucks because it's in January.
Yeah, but then if we go to warmer places, but usually
that's what we have to do. But anyway, whatever.
Anyway, so that's that. Make dating and make getting away a priority in your marriage. Does that sound right?
That does sound right.
I think so. Well, we hope you enjoyed that conversation, that kind of going deeper into the importance of date nights. It is true, everywhere you go, that every married couple who has a faithful, strong, vibrant marriage, date nights and making time for each other, that's the most essential ingredient. And so I hope we've given you a lot to think about, and that you could incorporate date nights if they're not a part of your life, or maybe kind of spicing up your date life, with that.
Because really, your marriage is the foundation of your family.
That's right.
And you have to have that strong foundation. And this is what your children need more than anything else, more than they need you to even be with them, to be honest with you. They need you and your spouse to have that firm foundation. And it's more subtle than you think. Kids are very perceptive in picking up emotions and the sense of the house, that whole environment.
Yeah.
So when you are good with your spouse, it's the best thing you could do for your kids.
Yeah. And so we at the Messy Family Project, we're on a mission to empower moms and dads to embrace their sacred calling. And we believe that if you want to change the world, you really need to begin with the family.
And the growth of this ministry is due to parents like you who listened to our podcast, reviewed it, and shared it. So if we've been a blessing to you, help us out and promote our ministry on social media and subscribe to the podcast and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yeah, so with more reviews and more sharing, we could become the #1 podcast out there, not just among Catholics, but in all of parenting. We want to be able to share this insight with them. So with your help, sharing with a friend, giving us a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you listen, that will really help our ministry evangelize and reach new places.
So this is our full-time job, and our team is able to reach thousands of families because of the generosity of those who believe in our mission. So please consider supporting our ministry by visiting our website, where you can donate, join our community of messy families, and find downloads, resources, and more info about upcoming events, all at messyfamilyproject.org.
And on our website, you can find things about joining our family board meeting webinar that we have coming up, or the recording. We also have other great insights for past date nights, as well as conversation starters for your date nights. And until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you.